In 2015, much of the discussion between the industry and the European Commission was whether or whether not to the digital single market. Because when the proposal came out, legitimately, industry felt that it's such a radical proposition that the uncertainty especially in the independent sector, would overweigh the proposed benefits by the European Commission. And as many people who attended the forum saw, there was a real, I suppose, fear within the industry that what will happen if this regulation will come forward. A year later, actually, I think the picture has changed quite radically. And if last year perhaps was described as a year of confrontation, then I think this year what we're really seeing is a really legitimate dialogue between the Commission and the community. And as Jürgen Gren, who is the advisor of Digital Single Market to Vice President Ansip, said, the European Commission actually has almost revived 200 proposals within 1 year that relates to this agenda. And they also came up with proposals and amended proposals that I personally actually see will benefit the industry. So now the question is not so much whether yes or no, but now the question is more how, to which capacity and when. I think for me the two most interesting proposals that came out of these negotiations one was about portability. And what the Commission has ensured to the industry is that they will not create a situation of pan-European licenses. So, but what they will enable is different forms of portability, and which means is that, you know, if you will be on the work, how you can do short-time portability, if you will be moving from one state to another, how you ensure that your content will travel, as well as, you know, business travel and all these kind of aspects. So what they're trying to create now is a sort of legal framework that, you know, allows us who have legitimately purchased, you know, say downloaded content or streaming content to be able to access that. If you think about it, I think it's quite radically different from an idea of a single market, because it doesn't mean from the business economic side that you would sell it as a single territory. However, you are enabling certain measures for customers and audiences who have paid for it to take their content. And also for me, who travels quite a lot, then it's been rather annoying that, you know, some of the materials, say on Spotify or iTunes or even Netflix, which I have purchased, I'm unable to view, or sports game or whatsoever. So I think this idea of opened up portability is really great, and it really doesn't take away the revenues of the content creators. The second theme that we also tapped in Tallinn is enabling measures to train professionals in the new reality. And I think that where are we now is that the role of filmmakers and producers has changed dramatically. So in a digital world, it's not anymore that the producer and the director will prepare the film and hand it over, but now they all need to be, everybody needs to be together, the film team, the sales team, the marketing team, really from the beginning of the creative idea to ensure the visibility in the world where so much content. And it was really welcoming to see that the Commission has been now working on both financial measures as well as policy measures to train and enable new forms of skills and skill training for the film professionals to cope with the situation. I think where we need to innovate is rebuilding the relationship with audience. And there has been a lot of attempts and discussions of at the EU level and in smaller markets, how do we develop our audiences. I think there is a fine line between development and engagement. And I think we are in a time where we need to engage audience, because ultimately we are competing for their attention time. Because people have mobiles, apps, you know, streaming platforms and so forth. So what we as filmmakers or creators are asking for the time. And that aspect of innovation hasn't really been touched. So I think the smaller countries really have a much greater possibility to engage exciting technology, because on a smaller scale we can prototype. If we fail, we can reinvent ourselves and try to figure out what's coming new. And a lot of discussion also been there saying that we need new business models. But it's a fact that the new business models don't appear from thin air. We have to do it by trial and error. And I think the capacity in smaller countries to test something on a smaller scale, adapt it and then enlarge it is a huge possibility. I think the second point in terms of innovation in the audiovisual sector is that we need to look outside of our own boundaries. I feel that it's rather arrogant and sometimes plainly annoying that we are so self-centered and we try to innovate the industry from inside, but I think it's a fair time to go out and look for new ideas and new partnerships outside of the sector. For example, in Israel there is right now a very interesting project which is basically looking on a DNA level how people search for films and look whether there is some kind of correlation or there is some kind of presumption. Also yesterday we had a gentleman, Arno Schäfer, from a German advertising company called Platform 161, which enables very specific targeted advertising to consumers. And I think, looking at on a wider perspective into science, into education, into, let's say, biotechnology, into arts, culture, and then filtering it into the film industry at this time is a very good logic. And in a way, what we have to do is that we have to bring the idea of startups, of eliminating friction, and talking directly to our users and audiences, and I think that would produce that innovation that we are currently looking for. So finally, I would like to actually say is that what we also need to bring into the discussion is money, and we need to also think about how we can find new money into the industry. And it's also been rather endemic that there are many workshops and events where creators are meeting technology. But the point with technology is that technology is not good, technology is not bad, but it's not neutral either. And what we have to basically do is that we also have to couple technology with some kind of sustainable business models there as well. And what we tried to do in Tallinn this year with our new Storytech initiative is also actually bring in startup investors and investors from other areas. Because, let's say, film investment and business investment is pretty much the same. It's very good teams, great ideas, very high risk. Somehow these two communities don't come together. And in a situation where public money is increasing everywhere, we have to go and establish a language between these two communities to actually enable a sort of a long-tail sustainability for European film.